so cool. What an amazing set of people here. Thanks.
It's an amazing community, right? So super founders are 2x better in terms of investing. So two times more likely to spot unicorns to your average angel investor. And 8 times more likely to start a multi-billion-dollar outcome.
Amazing.
So our goal today is to get them to apply back to YC.
That would be great.
Yeah, let's start with a little bit of history, Gary. So you started a company, you sold it, and then what happened next?
Okay, I wish it was that simple. So I started Prosperous in 2008 with my co-founder, Sachin Agrawal, who runs GrowSF today. I actually worked on it for a couple of years, and then I had a massive co-founder falling out with him, and I got super burnt out. And then luckily, Sachin, being really awesome and an incredible founder and CEO, he did get it sold to Twitter. So that was, I mean, the amazing thing about what we get to do is even if you don't quite hit everything that you hope you would do, you still get to, buy a home for your wife and newborn son. And so, I don't know, it's like I truly have deep gratitude for, the technology world, because, how cool is that? You can sit in front of a computer and write code or make a thing for other people, and then create, prosperity for not just yourself, but your team and, people around you. So that's, what a gift is that.
Yeah.
So, but, basically, let's see, what happened? In 2011, Harj Tagger, one of the managing partners at YC now, he peeled me off the floor. And I was just burnt out, and I couldn't work anymore. So I was like, sorry, Sachin, I gotta go. And then I ended up at YC. So they had funded us, they gave us, 2 whole tables at my wedding were people from YC. It's sort of like super founders or YPO, it's one of those things that makes a lot of friendships that are really powerful. And then, what else happened? I mean, I said no to a lot of weird things then. It was Ben Silverman was 10 people in Palo Alto still, and he was like, hey, do you want to come be the head of design for Pinterest? Maybe should have done that, I don't know. Brian and Joe from Airbnb are friends from the YC world, and then they were they had just reached $1 billion valuation. Of course, today it's 100 billion. And they were like, do you want to come run special projects? And then Paul and Harj and Jessica said, do you want to get paid $24,000 a year minimum wage to spend all your time doing homepage design for YC Winter 11? And I was like, yes, I'm going to do that one. Which it turned out to be really great, honestly. I ended up being one of the first external partners at YC. And it was when YC, to me, YC was this super formative moment. And then I remember going through YC and investors being like, wait, so you worked for Peter Thiel at Palantir, you went to Stanford, why did you do YC? I don't understand, why, And what we understood was actually it takes a village. There are people around us, being able to meet Steve Huffman from Reddit, or I wanted to be the next Drew Houston, or James Lindenbaum from Heroku, and for them to come and give openly of their time, and to come and just help us who never started a company before. That was just really cool. So I don't know. I think any community like this. In my book is really cool, because that's just what people need when they're trying to do a thing that's never been done before.
So lots of super founders in the group, obviously they get offers to join venture firms. Maybe they can start studios or investments, right? Or maybe they can go and start a company. You kind of did that. After starting that company, right? You ended up joining YC, becoming an investor. What was that experience like? Do you have any thoughts or advice? Super founders get lots of different offers for lots of different things to do. Joining companies, doing special projects for lots of things, starting their own next company, starting a fund, investing, joining a fund. How do they navigate this decision-making process?
I mean, some of it is did you make your number? I don't know. I feel like that's one of the things. But maybe that's even the wrong thing. I do still now, well, I don't know. I mean, I guess I told you all the other things I could have done. But then again, at that moment, like, I didn't know that Airbnb would turn into a $100 billion company. It was just like my buddies Brian and Joe, and I didn't know that, like, you know, Ben Silverman was going to, you know, go on to create something that, you know, was huge, and like how people like sort of bring together aesthetics, and like, you know, I didn't know Pinterest would become like what it became. So I think for me, I just followed my gut. I was like, this is the set of people who this was meaningful for me, and
was the appeal investing side of it, or was the appeal just being?
Oh, I never thought I would end up being an investor. I was just straight up like, I just want to be around founders, and I'm really burnt out. But you know, I would just sit for like half an hour with people and like redesign their home pages, and you know, that was enough for me.
Yeah. Many super founders, they typically have 2 to 4 years of earnouts, right? And during this time, you're kind of a little bit far from the edge of problems and things to build. How do you recommend, for super founders to get back, to kind of keep the founder mode active while they're doing their earnouts, right? To know what are the problems that are worth building, maybe keep their touch with the technical co-founders that they're going to end up having, or knowing what problems are. Like, how do you have that, fire and founder mode still while you're investing at, let's say, Google or Twitter?
I mean, I think, going back to what happened for me, like, I thought that I would start another company, and instead, like, YC basically surrounded me with people, and then I think Paul Buchheit from Gmail and Jeff Ralston, who created Yahoo Mail, they like, basically, like, were hanging around YC around the same time, and then I think I was doing so many office hours that it was awkward for Paul Graham and Jessica Livingston to not make me a partner. But it was like, I don't think it was part of the plan per se. It was just like, oh, this would be awkward if we didn't, like, make this person a partner. And so I didn't expect to end up being an investor at all. But I'm really glad it happened. And then, back then it was kind of normal for partners to invest in companies. So I don't know, to answer your question though, I think like just being around the next generation of people who are starting out, super friggin' awesome, actually. And then, some of it is like, I had no money at all to my name. Like, Palantir was like, how many more years? Like 8 years away from IPOing, and like, Posterous was like still the startup that hadn't even sold to Twitter, and Twitter itself was like many years from IPOing. So
maybe coming to YC demo days and like being mentoring some of these startups, is that kind of how
that would be? I mean, that's my pitch to you. I mean, but the other pitch to you is like, you'll make a shit ton of money. Like, we looked at all the people who invested in YC companies 2018 to 2020, and anyone who did at least 3 investments in every batch during those 2 years, the median was 5x TVPI. The top quartile was 8x. The top decile was 15x. And then, I mean, all of those are like friggin' amazing, the best returns you could have, like as good as any of the bulge bracket VC funds, but it could be like your own money. And then the really funny thing is the bottom quartile was 3.3x, which is still higher than the top quartile of like whatever you would normally do in venture period. So I don't know, that's my like, it's a little selfish, so thank you for indulging in my, my timeshare. But on the other hand, like, it's worth your while. And then I actually think, like, what a friggin' amazing time to be alive, that we can, like, literally the age of intelligence is that, you can have a 150 IQ Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder. And it's not just for me, it's like for all of us, actually. Like, every single person on the planet is going to have it, they just don't know it yet. And if I'm looking out in the crowd and seeing like all the, like, just basically super cracked super founders in the audience, it's like a lot of you in this audience are going to be the people who create that Jiminy Cricket. Maybe you'll vibe code it, and it'll just appear on like 1 billion people's shoulders, and then 8 billion people's shoulders. Like, the transformation is like truly wild, and like, what a time to be alive.
Yeah. So you ended up starting Initialize, investing in lots of first-time founders, second-time founders. Have you seen any traps that second-time founders fall for?
I mean, falling for prestige or importance, like, I don't know. I mean, I think that the basics are just the basics, right? Like, who is it for? Does it actually solve the problem? I mean, do they want it? Will they pay for it? Like, look down, like, is there growth? Is there retention? Like, it's just the same thing over and over again. I think the danger is getting hypnotized by, oh, well, like, now I have access to investors that I didn't have before, or I get invited to speak at these conferences, or, you know, at YC there's this classic, like the worst pejorative that Paul or Jessica would call people is like, oh, that person's a scenester. And then the main issue with that is like, now that, you know, you guys are successful, like you have, you know, something to like point to and say like, I did that, right? And like the whole world, like startups are so interesting, tech is like totally wild. And so suddenly like you could be a scenester accidentally and without even knowing it. And like, you know, the best antidote to being a scenester is like, get back to building and get back to spending time with users, and like the rest is just noise. Yeah, don't speak at TechCrunch Disrupt.
You mentioned the importance of earnestness. Like, how do second-time founders, how do super founders get the right feedback? Because lots of people are going to tell them, yeah, it's a good idea. Obviously, you've sold a company before, right? How do you make sure it's the right idea? How do you get the best feedback out of people? The same way, you know, the first-time founders in a YC batch going back and forth with lots of customers, you know, try to get to the answer in a very short period of time.
I mean, I think ultimately it's all the same things, right? You know, you're the same person you were when you started your first company. Deep down, like you're not that different, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. Like act like that, you know. Like don't let people gas you up, and then beyond that, like trust the logs. Like I mean, you know, do you remember getting your first customer? And do you remember like talking to people in user research and showing like, here's our paper prototype or whatever you did? And they're like, yeah, this is great. And then you email them afterwards, like, here's the link, like you can try it now. And it's like crickets, like they just don't give a fuck. Like they just wanted to get out of talking to you at that moment, and they were just gonna say whatever to like, you know, make you happy and like make a quiet exit, right? So like trust your logs, you know, trust your retention curves. Like one of my favorite things that I was reminded by I just spent a bunch of time with Varun Mohan, who's like he's like the super cracked, like I think he's like 26 now. He's like the founder of Windsurf. And what I realized, you know, he described how he did it. Like he pivoted 3 times, and then each time he like threw away like millions of dollars in ARR. And the way he did it was like basically being totally sure that his team and what they were working on was going to come together, but then totally like refusal to believe like total bullshit that people were telling him. Like he was really, really razor focused on like, I have this confirmatory evidence that I should stay working on this thing, or like I can look at the numbers and like people aren't using it, and then he's gonna trust like, he's going to be, he remains both the extreme optimist, like I'm gonna figure this out, we're gonna figure this out, and like totally realistic about what was really happening for the product or the business, or you know, whether it was actually good. And that's probably you know, you're surrounded by people who like are gonna lie to you and like, you know, fill you with things that are just like kind of not true. And then, I mean, some of it is like, maybe it's like not gonna be a huge room of people who are gonna like keep you honest. Like, I think there are probably people in this room who could be like your accountability group, like your people who like all of you meet regularly, and you just keep yourself from like lying to yourself, right? Like that's sort of the worst thing that could happen to you know, rich, really famous, like really successful people throwing money at you founders is like, no one, like if you aren't intentional about surrounding yourself with people who are gonna tell you what's really going on, you're just gonna live in fantasy land, and that's like a waste, you know, why would we do that? Like, might as well take the money and go to Vegas, man, like it's better.
Interesting that Varun had kind of thrown out, you know, millions of ARR and pivoted. With all these, you know, AI tools and this next generation of, you can code and you can build a product much faster, right? Where do you think super founders can find defensibility and moat? Or generally in the age of AI, where do you find defensibility?
I mean, a lot of you spent a lot of time in like places, like really unusual places in the world. And I think, in this moment where intelligence is infinite, you know what? Oh, actually, I'll tell you a story. The head of product and head of research at OpenAI came by to have lunch with us at YC with the partners. And the big ask they had for us is, hey, do you guys think that you could get your startups to give us all their evals? And I was like, no, dude, what the fuck? And I think that actually betrays like some of what's going on right now, is that like founders go in, they know the space, they have access to real workflows, real knowledge work, things that like people, kind of like where there's muck, there's brass, right? It's like a lot, I heard bio, I heard medicine, I heard like maybe chip design, like there's all kinds of stuff that like is out there that and you have access to those people. And then, remember, we're like materializing like 8 billion Jiminy crickets sitting on people's, shoulders. And sure, there's like consumer and all of that, but let's be frank, like ChatGPT and OpenAI is going to eat all that consumer stuff, right? What's left? Like, I think it's going to be vertical AI. I think it's going to be like, there's a workflow, there's proprietary data, there's systems, and you just have to go and you're going to fly to Dubuque or Iowa, I don't know, wherever. Like, you're going to go to places where maybe some of you have already gone, and that you just like run the play. Last time you sold software maybe, and this time you're still selling like literally like workforce replacement or thing like, I don't know, workforce liberation, let's call it.
And it's a progress.
Like, you don't have to pass butter anymore. Like, these people can do much more interesting jobs than like by rote copying and pasting this cell in the spreadsheet to this other cell, right? Like, literally there are, I don't know, hundreds of millions of people in the world who do knowledge work that is no more complicated than like copy and pasting something from a spreadsheet to an email. Like, what kind of fucking butter pass and torture is that, right? Like, why would that happen? Why does that exist, right? And this is like a tax on society, but also like a torture. It's a form of torture, actually.
Yeah.
And you need to liberate them.
So you've been around successful founders a lot, through Initialize, through YC, before and after. Is there any patterns or stories that you've kind of recognized now about the best founders or the best companies? Like, what are some characteristics, maybe other than super founders or first-time founders? Like, is there kind of something deeper that you see when you think about the Airbnb founders, Coinbase founders?
I mean, what's funny is when you talk to them, the story is just so simple, actually. I mean, if you hear Brian Armstrong's story, like, it's not that, he's basically like, well, I read this Satoshi Nakamoto white paper, and it was really good, and then I think this will be something that's significant to all of society, so let me live in the future and then work backwards from that. And it's like, well, he started doing a mobile, a Bitcoin client from Android, and then he built it, and then he was like, actually this sucks. Like, you have to leave your phone open all day, like it's syncing all the time, and then, okay, like, well, that's not gonna work. Let me do cloud hosted, like, GitHub made Git and put that in the cloud, so let me get that Bitcoin client, put it in the cloud. And then he did that, and that was actually the first version of, I think it was called BitBank, actually. So I got like, a Bitcoin from Brian Armstrong when it was called BitBank. And the other funny thing was he emailed me and he was like, hey, Garry, I'm looking for co-founders. And I was like, oh yeah, man. Like, and then what I should have said was like, I'll do it. So luckily I did end up funding him later, but I guess the thing that really comes back to me is like, these things, if you, I guess like, isn't this what, Charlie Munger says? It's like always invert, right? Like, you can just take almost anything that, think about the future and, what is going to happen? What's like seems inevitable? Like, for Brian, it was, seems inevitable that, Bitcoin will be actually significant in the world? And then like, let me work backwards from that. Like, what would be the necessary steps to create that? And
what would be the inevitable future?
yeah, exactly. And then, yeah, I mean, it sounds too simple to be true, but like that seems like sort of a thing that comes back over and over again. I mean, Parker Conrad's a very special case where he got really deep in the idea maze. He discovered like, oh, I mean, there's like actually a really big business over here, but he made all these structural mistakes around like not building software, like raising too much money, like hiring too many people, like, and he paid the price for it. And then it was just fascinating to see, he like just got back in the saddle and he's like, I don't need to like search for a market. I know exactly what I need to do. And then he like, we gave him some money, he raised some money from YC, and then he just spent 2.5 years in like literally a dungeon basement that we would go visit him in. And actually I remember like at the end of about 2.5 years, I was like getting a little bit worried because we were like the lead seed investor. I'm like, Parker, are you gonna launch this? And he's like, yes, I'm going. And then he launched it and of course like everything worked out. But it was fascinating to me. Like he worked backwards from like, I know that a Zenefits that is actually built using software is going to exist. And then he just like single-mindedly made that thing. And then he, you know, the other weird thing that I realized is, I don't know, some of you might have like really profound chips in pockets, or sorry, chips on your shoulder. And then the wild thing is like, it's pretty clear that the bigger the chip, you can materialize in your pocket if you just really like allow yourself to feel that.
Sure. So I was going through the request for startups that you guys put out. One of the main things I think personally you've pushed for is AI agents, right? Can you elaborate more on kind of what part of it, like are there ideas that you don't see enough founders build, or like, you know, super founders, like this is like a super founder executable type of agent idea that you should go after?
I mean, we're actually like actively redoing how we do everything at YC with agents. Like my partner Pete Kumin released this great blog post, have you guys seen it, about you know, you should let your users write your own prompts. And then that actually sparked like a whole reorg for us where, you know, left to our own devices, how we do YC could have easily turned into, I have 14 equal investing partners at YC, and then we could have easily found ourselves data labelers for the AI overlord. And it's like, actually we had to like invert it. We said, you know what, like every single one of us, we're gonna write our own prompts, we're gonna do our own, and the wild thing now is like Gemini 2.5 Pro with like 2 million token context. Like, I think we're scratching the surface on how crazy that is in this moment. Like, you know, we can do things, like we can just come up with like crazy ideas, and then I don't have to write a single line of code. Like, it just does it. Like, a good example of this is like, we're bringing 3,000 people in for AI startup school. And now with 2 million tokens context, like I can actually scan like the bios and the stories and their applications for all the people who are like coming to that thing. And I'm going to personally introduce 3,000, like 1,500 people to 1,500 other people who are the perfect person for that person to meet. Like whether it's like, oh, you grew up in the same hometown, or like you both contributed to this open source project, or whatever it was. Like you could do that now, and like, you know, that's a kind of a weird example, but it's like if you ever have to throw a big event or wedding, like you could just throw all the info into Gemini 2.5 Pro now and like never have to make a seating chart again, right? So it's like, I mean, and then, you know, at the level of like 3,000 attendees, it's like, you couldn't even hire people to do that, right? That level of volume is not possible. But like that's, I mean, this is like a dumb toy example of like the kind of things you can do now. And then some of it is like, you gotta be all the way in the prompts. Like, you know, one of the things we discovered that's like totally wild and amazing is like, you don't even have to write the prompt yourself. You could actually just throw a bunch of data into like Gemini on its own, and then tell it like, okay, well, given this data and like we labeled it in this way, like write me a prompt. And so, you know, being able to meta prompt is, and then, you know, that's sort of the act of materializing this Jiminy Cricket, like creating agents, is like the most powerful thing that's happening. And and we're seeing it. It's like we see, so here's another crazy stat. At YC, since summer of 24, so back in the day, Airbnb famously could grow their revenue 10% week on week. And they did it for the whole batch. And then of course Sequoia came in and dropped a bunch of money on it, and like it turned into this incredible enduring business. But they were for the last like 18 years, like if you were the very top #1 YC company, you could grow that fast, 10% week on week. Like that was like an aspirational thing, like that if you could do it, like man, you're like set. So, when people come to me and they're like, is it a scam? Like AI, like what is this? Like, they'll never justify the capital expense. And I'm like, you don't understand, okay? Like, this is like real, and something is happening here. And the people in this room have like the opportunity to literally create it.
We've seen YC invest in kind of outside of software. We've started with biotech, now with lots of kind of reindustrialization and deep tech and space and everything else. That's kind of generally also what lots of VCs are going towards. How do you think kind of super founders who may come from, let's say, an ad tech background or sold a database company or whatnot, should they move to these adjacent deep tech spaces? Should they not? How do they learn? What are the frontiers? But because the data shows
if you're rich enough. I think that's what I would do. I don't know.
But if they're not rich enough, like maybe in terms of YC companies, have you seen like founders move around between like prior areas of expertise?
Yes. I mean, I think the reality is yes. I mean, I don't know. It's hard not to bring up Elon in that, like, what he's done is incredible. He's like shown that you can compound your wins, and I don't know, if anything, like. Regardless of what you think about Elon, like I, am having my own like situation there where it's like, this guy's a fucking hero. And also like, oh man, I'm having problems with like what's going on. But regardless, like whether you hate him or not, like actually I think we can all agree we should have more of them. Like we actually need and I don't know, maybe that's like the exhortation to the people in the room. Like, I mean,
Ryan Armstrong
he's doing it. He's doing hardware, Like he went from AI and voice, and then now he's doing a very hard thing, and that thing might actually be one kind of moonshot, right? Like commercial, practical robotics in every home. Like I think we might be on the verge of something that's like far more just like insane right now, right? Like. We can see it. VLAs are really insane. Like you're doing slam, like you're doing world-class slam. I don't know. I think that like that's maybe a progression that we should really encourage. That if you have connections, if you have the ambition, and you've made enough money, or even if you've made like enough to take care of your family, like it still means you can actually take a bigger risk. And Will was saying he recruits for VCs. He says that 50% of people who, or like some crazy percentage of the people that the VCs have asked you to recruit for, like they need some component of hard tech, which means that like VCs and the capital markets are ready to fund it. So it's not, maybe it's space. I mean, space is probably the craziest new frontier that's being opened up. Like space itself is now a new platform on which you can build. Like you can bring things to space. There's telecom to do. There's at YC, like there's Albedo is literally has created things that are better than the best American spy satellites, and they just launched their first one, and it opened its eyes. And I think it's remarkable what's happening now. And as you develop yourself as a founder and your network gets deeper and your ambitions for what you want to do in your life get bigger and bigger, like that, you don't have to do B2B SaaS again. No hate on B2B SaaS, I love it. You make a lot of money on that.
So tech is moving fast, lots of work in AI. Any recommendations for where super founders should be looking for co-founders? Maybe people who are more at the edge and the forefront of what's happening in the AI land or the technical problems that are happening, because super founders can raise and they can sell and they can find the right customers. Maybe they still need the latest and the most brightest founders or co-founders to join them to actually build this.
I mean, I guess there's always just the next generation. I guess I remember at Stanford, we had all this. I was the president of this dying entrepreneurship club, and it was I had $100,000 in the club, and it was okay, well, I mean, what do we even do with this? And then we just put up flyers on this is what you did at Stanford, I think. You just put up flyers in all the bathrooms, especially in the engineering quad, and we were just hey, we're starting a new engineering entrepreneurship society. Interviews are here. Apply on the web, and we're doing interviews next week, and then
back to Stanford, back to Y2E2.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I think there's the really cool thing. What Naval says is dude, this is at this moment, all 8 billion people can find the other 8 billion people. So if you're weird in some particular way, or you believe the world needs to be changed in some particular way, you kind of have access to those people now. And then not only that, you now have a little 150 IQ Jiminy Cricket that can do deep research for you and go and find if they don't find the person directly, they could find what are the Schelling points for that particular thing. So I don't know, there's not really an excuse at this point.
In one of the prior events we had, my portfolio founder Naveen Rao, who sold to Databricks, what he had done, if you remember, he found this PhD student at MIT and reached out because he saw this cool paper. And then they ended up starting a company together. Naveen had sold the company for $400 million before that, and found 2 students out of MIT, and they co-founded the next company together. Last question. How is YC looking to work with super founders? I was listening to your podcast with Shane Parrish. I love that podcast.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, he's awesome.
And I think you kind of mentioned, super founders are a gift that YC is giving to venture firms. Why? How do we encourage super founders to come back and apply to YC for their second company after their exit?
I guess we're still, I don't know, come talk to me. I don't know, I'm interested in it. So, I mean, one of the things that we're realizing at YC, I'm working on an essay right now about founder mode, and then, YC has discovered a very interesting tributary of it, which is this concept of you can do things in your company or any organization by policy or by agency. And if you're a startup, you try to do almost all of it by agency. And if you're a bureaucracy, you try to do all of it almost entirely by policy. And so, I don't know, I think that's a very powerful idea. It's when you run your own company, when you start your next company, you might be running your company now. Ask yourself, what percentage of the decisions that we make as a company, as a team, we're gonna make 10,000 decisions every single year. What percentage of those are done by policy and what are done by agency? And I'm not saying 100% of them should be agency, but at the margins, when the chips are down, you're fighting a competitor, I don't know, things are kind of not obvious, don't just default to what worked in the past, because clearly what worked in the past is almost never the thing that's gonna get you to the next level.
Amazing. Thank you, Garry.